Now, moving swiftly on to the second issue. And this is a key issue. Israel-Hamas war divides societies in the West. Now, I've just got back from London. I'm sitting in New York today, a part of my peripatetic lifestyle, I suppose. And in London, I found tens of thousands marching in favor of a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And there were many protests. There wasn't just one. Obviously, there is a war of narratives playing out full throttle in London. The Labour Party experienced a major rebellion over Sir Keir Starmer's position on the Israel-Hamas war. There is a poster war going on. People are tearing posters of the other side as leafy and as bourgeois a neighbourhood as Hampstead. And if you go across Europe, whether it is the Netherlands, whether it is, which had an election, whether it is France, whether it is Germany, whether it is Spain, whether it is Italy, whether it is the Scandinavian countries, there is a deep divide. Of course, there is a divide in the US. Palestinian students were shot recently, unfortunately, tragically. At the same time, there have been shouting matches in Ivy League campuses. There have been professors who've told me personally that the Hamas attack in Israel needed to happen because, of course, people in Gaza can't even breathe. So sentiments are high, feelings are strong, division and polarization is deep. Glenn, why do you think this war is proving to be so divisive, so polarizing?
Well, I think what we're talking, the Israel-Hamas Palestine issue that we're talking about now is closely woven into the next one we'll talk about, which is the success of the far right in the Netherlands. There are sociological and demographic reasons that link the two, and global historical ones, but we'll get to that. Israel has long since lost the perception war, certainly in every Muslim society, and even in Western society. And it almost is what's happening now. It fits into this perspective and mold. Sympathy goes reflexively to the weak. That's sort of it. Israel has a powerful army and a successful society. The Palestinians have Gaza, where there are 2 million people as I wrote in an article recently, in an area that is smaller than dozens of privately owned ranches in Texas, where no one lives except for cows. They can't get out. They don't have a country. They don't have rights. And the perception is that if they raise their head, the Israelis whack them, if not kill them. There is truth and misleading perception, both to both of those, to that reality. But that will shape and determine the reaction, the perceptions of most of the world. It's frankly as simple as that. Also, in Western societies now, in the past 50 years, in Europe, and in the past 25 perhaps, or 20 in the United States, the societies are more pluralistic, meaning, in this specific instance, have much larger Muslim populations. And so the initial perspective of the domestic political frameworks and views in Western societies is going to be more fractured and sympathetic in some ways to the Palestinian Muslim perspective. Thus, Israel will be challenged more.
If I may very quickly chime in, one of my friends in the Labour Party was very worried about losing the Muslim vote. And he pointed out that now most Muslims vote for the Labour Party and most Hindus vote for the Conservative Party. And that division, that fault line on the basis of culture, which Peter Isaacson champions, And that fault line based on civilization that Samuel Huntington talked about is very much there. It has come into Western societies with increased immigration.
It's simply a fact. We people identify more viscerally with others whom they imagine to be closer to themselves, and that is reducible to how people look and what religion people have. And I think that religion is probably even a more powerful driver of belief and action than the sex drive, which is supposedly the strongest drive in human nature. Um, and all we need to do is look at any society's history and see how uh, every society, just about certainly in the West, has been torn apart endlessly by the clashes of religion, endless for hundreds of years, and that's which is a terrifying prospect. But I think is driving many of the perceptions, independent of um, or shaping the responses to Hamas's beheading of and massacring of children and women, and Israel's blowing up half the buildings and killing thousands of innocent Palestinians.
Now, a key point here, Glenn, is also generational, which you and I have discussed. And younger people increasingly in campuses, in schools, in all walks of life are uncomfortable with Israel. They see Israel as an apartheid society. They very much believe that Palestinians should have equal rights in their own state, or at least a one state wherein they have equal rights. And this is in contrast with older people who in the West tend to be more pro Israel. You look at the UK, for instance, David Cameron is back from the dead, and he was one of the great friends of Israel. So this generational divide is playing out in society after society in the West. Now, what explains this?
Oh, you're asking me what explains this? Well, I think the older generation, to the extent they have any conscious reference points, will reflexively think of the Holocaust and the incineration and gassing of 6 million Jews, and will feel sympathy towards the Jewish plight, and will think of what is also currently the case, that Hamas, the leader of Gaza, is pledged to kill the Jews and eliminate them from the river to the sea, is the expression, which is from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which it really clearly is a call for the elimination of the Jews on Palestinian land, meaning their end. The Hamas charter is inspired by, even consciously taken from, much of the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which most of you probably know, was a document written by the Russian intelligence service about the year 1900, a profoundly anti-Jewish tract. It was done for domestic European reasons, but it built upon 2 millennia of anti-Semitism in the Christian world, and the Muslims were happy to embrace these hideous lies, and that is part of the framework of Hamas. That's not the framework of all Palestinians who want their own country, but the anti-Semitism is reflexive and widespread. And how is one to respond to that? That's what the older generation in the West opposes, therefore being sympathetic to the Israelis, and the younger sees 2 million Palestinians locked in a small enclave without rights, and a powerful, rich Israel that is continuing to seize the remaining lands now occupied by Palestinians. End of reasoning. They don't see that the Palestinian leaders 20 years ago refused to accept a two-state solution. What are the Israelis to do? Uh, they do see, the younger generation, that the Israelis have put the Palestinians in an impossible situation, and they don't see as clearly that Hamas has this legacy and convictions that are profoundly, genocidally anti-Semitic.
Now, very quickly, Peter Isaacson says that there's a new awareness of colonial heritage that the Cold War obscured and the unipolar moment obscured. And the younger generation now is picking up on this anti colonial sentiment. And in India, the tide is in the opposite direction because India, after 1947, was very much in favor of Palestinian rights. In fact, when I was a young officer, we used to train Palestinian officers in our academy, most of whom were children of Fatah leaders or nephews of Fatah leaders. They were corrupt, they were unfit, they were unprofessional. But hey ho, there we go. Fatah was bosom buddies of India. Indira Gandhi would embrace Yasser Arafat on all public fora. And the left, which was in power, because remember, India is technically still a socialist country as per its constitution. The preamble changed, I believe, in 1974, 1975. Indira Gandhi changed that. And we continue to be technically a socialist country. India was very pro-Palestinian. Now, under the Hindu party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, sympathies have shifted towards Israel. In fact, some people view Israel as a role model for India. Others want to emulate the Jews in terms of educational, financial, and cultural success. And so now in India, the right and actually a lot of the young support Israel, whilst the left and the opposition Congress party would not even condemn Hamas because if they do, they lose the Muslim vote. So it's a very interesting division in India, which is perhaps in a very different direction to the West. And the colonial awareness perhaps in India has gone down a bit, whilst for the young in the West, it has gone up a bit to address Peter's point.
Yeah, I think Peter makes a very good point that it's true. In the West, in white European societies, the Jew is viewed as the other by the Christian dominant culture, and so the Jew is always screwed. But in this context, the Jews in Israel are viewed as whites, and whites are viewed as the colonizers and the racists, and the brown-ish Muslim Palestinians are viewed as the oppressed and the victims of colonization. And Israel is a creation of the West in the Middle East. Now, what the Muslims did to the Jews and to the Christians in the same area is considered not relevant in this context, but I think Peter makes a very good point that and I perceive it a lot even in my own children. The framework is this equation that sees the white European Abrahamic, except for Muslim cultures, as imperialistic and therefore to be opposed or default in the wrong.